Thanks, Esther, for that report. Joining us here in our Washington studios are two distinguished guests. Hermine Zossooungbo, founder of the African Immigrant Organization, and Carine Kaneza, member of the Burundian Women and Girls for Peace and Security in Burundi. I have to say that, ladies, I am profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to host the two of you on Straight Talk Africa once again.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you very much, Shaka.
You're most welcome.
It's a pleasure.
Later in the program, we will give you, the audience, a chance to call and talk with our guests. The number to call is 202-619-3111. The US country code is 1. Let me come to you immediately, Hermine. What does Women's Day mean to you, really? In very simple terms, what does it mean to you?
Really, I mean, honestly, Women's Day does not mean anything special to me because I believe that every day is Women's Day due to all the work that women have been doing, all the contribution, social, economic, political contribution that women have been doing in terms of rearing children, educating children, all that they've been making on the continent and elsewhere. I believe that every day should be a day of praise for women.
What about you, Carine? Why should we, in fact, be celebrating this great Women's Day?
I agree with my sister when she says that every day should be a Women's Day. At the same time, I think Women's Day, coming from a country like Burundi, which is going through a crisis and where on a daily basis women are struggling with coming to terms to what's going on in our country. We have women who have been, who have been raped, who are fleeing our country, who live in refugee camps. I think for me, it's a day where every woman and every man stand in solidarity and reflect a little bit on the lives and contributions at the same time of women in general.
But do they really do so?
Hopefully they do. I did. I hope you did.
Someone might say that what you are probably saying reflects perhaps the concerns of the elite women. What about the ordinary African woman, the type of woman that I used to see in cabaret very early in the morning, carrying a hoe, a child on her back, going to dig? What does such a day really mean for her?
And sometimes on a bicycle.
Yeah. The thing is, I think we live in a global world where some terminologies have been used maybe in a misguided fashion. I was making a comment just before the show about the word empowerment, and I'm personally uncomfortable with that because it carries this. It conveys a meaning of giving power back to a group of people who are powerless, and it's absolutely wrong. And that brings me back to what you're saying. Women as powerful leaders and role models have always been there. They've shaped the humanity as we know it today. I'm standing here because my grandmother gave me the values and an attitude and a worldview that allowed me to go and find myself in different parts of the world and being exposed, thanks to my grandmother. When you talk about local women, I grew up every year we would go and sit with my grandmother, who was a leader in her own community, and I will never forget things she would say in terms of, how do you raise a child, and how do you posture yourself? What's your posture in society? What kind of values do you need to bring on the table when you're talking to really the world as we know it today? So it's a challenge for, I think, women today to grasp, especially African women. I'm talking about African women who live in a Western world, but who were actually we've been shaped by African traditional values. It's not an easy task, but at the same time, it brings it some richness.
And I would like to add the fact that, women in the local areas, women in the rural villages, they have this power embedded within them. And as you were talking about empowerment, that it's really important to celebrate. But celebrate it, all that in just one day. That's why I was saying earlier that, it doesn't really make a big sense. Yes, it's good to bring out all the work that they have done, the power that they have shown or that they continue to show. But in the meantime, are we going to, put it there and are we going to just ignore that part of society? So I think the discussion is really important around those women, because the women like you and I, we are today in a developed world. Women in the urban areas in Africa, they are making their way also through everything. The one in the rural areas, they have this power, but they're still lagging behind.
It's very interesting that you both say what you have said, and I have to add, frankly, that when my grandmother, Sarah, was alive, I would go to visit Kabale, and I would find myself literally going on my knees to greet my grandmother. I could never do that to my grandfather, nor could I do it to my father. What makes women tick, really?
Well, you see that a lot of it is just the respect that we paid for elderly people in Africa, in our African communities in general. The elderly person, or anybody who is older than you, not just elderly people, but anybody who is older than you, hold a high importance and value in front of you. And in most of the communities, people don't address the brothers and the sisters by their name. And don't even talk about your grandparents, because these are people who are our libraries, because they have all the oral tradition, they have the oral values. It's true that they didn't have the chance to have a written, how do we say it? Have a written note of all this knowledge and experience and everything that they have. But in order for you to acquire that knowledge, you still have to go to those people. And that's why they are so well respected. And again, when we go back to later in history, we know that not the French, I always say the French people.
The Amazons?
The colonizers, actually. The colonizers are the one who changed women's role in African society. One of the legacies that they left, among other things, is the change of the status of women, is imposing upon African people a male-dominated society. That did not exist before. Women were playing a great role. They were rulers. They were priestesses. They were the one that people will use. It's through those women that people connect through the spiritual well-beings. Those women were very powerful, and they hold a great respect. And that's why we still see you still see our grandmothers, or we have had that kind of respect toward our grandparents.
And some of those women, by the way, came from a country which was known as Dahomey, which incidentally currently happens to be, guess where?
In Benin.
Benin, where you come from.
That's true.
The Amazon.
The Amazon. And that's why I usually say, you know what, for every woman should be an Amazon.
Yes.
Because the Amazon are the most important, one of the most important, I won't say the most, but one of the most important group of women in history.
You would explain
Defenders
a little bit
fighters.
further about the Amazon when we come from a break. Now we will pause for a short break, and we would like to remind you that Straight Talk Africa is now on the social networking website Twitter, and we are tweeting live. Follow us at VOA Shaka, that's VOA Shaka, and join in on today's discussion with your questions and comments. Don't forget to use the hashtag VOA Women Empowerment. And we are still on Facebook. Just enter the keyword Straight Talk Africa, become a fan, and connect with other friends of the Voice of America. We'll be right back with you, so please don't go away.